listening to the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Justin Allen.
I'm Brian Pittard.
I'm Steve Morey.
And I'm Matt Broussard.
And we are your hairy, heavy homos that talk about comic books, but you don't have to be a hairy, heavy homo to listen in. And we're going to be covering a bunch of new books that have come out, but we're also going to touch on some TV. We were a little bit behind in addressing Supergirl, Flash crossover, a couple of other things, but one thing we did want to bring up was Daredevil Season 2, which hit on Netflix. Let me start with Matt, since Matt provided this awesome graphic you'll be seeing with this episode in relation to Season 2. Matt, what did you think of Season 2 of Daredevil there?
It corrected a lot of things that people didn't love about the Jennifer Garner take on Elektra, so that was nice. We got more fights with ninjas, and the standout win for the second season was John Bernthal. His Punisher is so great and so perfectly cast that, you know, here's a character that has, 3 failed movie attempts, didn't seem like it had a fan base, and all of a sudden there's enough interest in this guy for Netflix to greenlight a series just for Punisher. So that was an unexpected highlight for Season 2.
And I understand that Brian has also seen it?
I have.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure we'll get into it a little bit, but the beginning of the show was great. I like the Punisher and Daredevil going head-to-head kind of stuff. It seemed like it lagged, and so there was some pacing issues in the middle. And at one point, I think we actually stopped watching just because we were burning out, lost interest, all the above. But when we came back and we had a relatively quiet afternoon, we got right back into it. And, I mean, we're going to spoil some stuff. I assume that is sort of, understood by our listeners. When a certain character, I guess I don't have to say who it is, but you can narrow it down to someone from Season 1, comes back in like the mid to second half of the series. He doesn't have a huge, or as I should say in the parlance of Trump, huge, with a Y, effect or role rather, but he has a big effect, and he actually sets Punisher up on his sort of second arc. And that combined with the Elektra storyline kind of heating up, morphing into something from Season 1 with Stick, and with which we didn't really know at the time what the war was, but seeing that develop into what is the Hand, that's when I think I just got really excited into it. But a lot of the midpoint connective tissue, the trial, and Elektra and Matt running off and having wacky adventures at night, and the drama there, as much as that's an important, I think, part of the story, I don't know that it was handled very well. It just felt kind of slower, and you know, some shows have that pacing issue where, you know, you're trying to keep the listener or the viewer propelled forward, and you know, you're kind of banking on the binge watching, but I don't know that they made the right choices there to keep people. And I've heard from several others now that was their slope, that was their point where they stopped for a while as well. I'd be interested to see these shows, you know, week to week as opposed to binge watch, because I feel like there would be interesting differences, and I may not get tired of it as quickly in certain places, you know. But overall, I think it was a very successful second series, and I'm very excited for more of this, hopefully in the future.
Brian, do you think the fact that this show wasn't meant to be multiple seasons had anything to do with the challenge of delivering another really, really strong set of episodes?
I don't think so, because they really didn't leave everything on the stage in the first season. I mean, it was good. It was really good. But I don't think that the way they structured the first season inherently limited what could come after. They left it pretty open. But certain characters having to come back, like, what's her name? Who's the assistant?
Paige?
Paige, yes. Paige. I didn't love her role in this. And the character from the first season into this, I mean, she's got an arc. I will give her and the writers credit. Like, she has an arc. It doesn't go where you think it's going to go at all, but it's an arc. And I felt like at times that she was the glue that kept the various stories sort of together.
Well, that's how it was in Season 1, though, at least on my end. I mean, like, without her, I thought Season 1 was just a big mess.
I like season 1 more.
I like season 1 a lot more, but I will agree that I thought Karen served a very good purpose as an anchor in that first season. I thought that was a very smart character to anchor the show around, much more than Matt, in a sense.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Did you like her as much in the second season, though?
About as much. I liked her journey more in the second.
Okay.
Because it felt as if her confusion dominated the first season, whereas her passion and commitment dominated the second. And I liked that version of her a little bit more. That being said, I don't think season 2 is anywhere near the quality of season 1. And I have to say one thing that probably made me feel that more than anything is, as good as some of the elements of Punisher were, I can't say all, and some of the Elektra elements were, there were moments where it felt like Daredevil was a bystander in his own series.
And, totally.
And I think it may have been better served if you had just introduced Punisher now or had just introduced Elektra. Because it was too bloated, I felt, in a lot of parts. For some reason, John Bernthal was not working for me at various points as Punisher.
Really?
And I was really surprised at that. There were other points where, we'll just spoil, with Kingpin in prison, I thought it was fantastic. But there were other bits where there was just it felt as if it was like late casting and he stepped in for somebody else in some of the other scenes. I wanted to like it more than I did, but I just thought there was too much going on at points. Rosario Dawson, I want a series of her. I want Night Nurse, because every time she's on screen, she's all I look at. And there was a lot of stuff going on in the hospital scenes where she was involved with, and she was still what my eyes were anchored to. I'm sorry to overdo the anchor motif here. But,
well, it's interesting. As somebody who hasn't seen the entirety of the series, I've only seen the first, third of it. It is interesting. I'm already running into the whole pacing issues, which is why it's taken me such a long time to finish it. There'd be a really, really great, strong episode, and then I just kind of feel like it slows down a little bit. And I kind of feel you, Bill, there with the John Bernthal comment where, I don't really see him as the Punisher much, but then again, my image of the Punisher is probably the John Romita Jr. Punisher from Warzone, where I'm expecting some big beefy dude who doesn't really speak all that much and kind of lays waste to as much of his friends as he does his enemies. Yeah.
I've never seen anything close to my Punisher on screen. There isn't. Thomas Jane is just too crazy, and even though you might argue that Frank Castle is a maniac, there's still a blinders on purpose for the man. And
there's a cool calculation to his character that I've always felt. And he does have those moments where he kind of breaks out, depending on who's writing him, into this crazed, I'm just going to pump bullets into every orifice of every person that's here until they're all dead. But, there's a lot more thought, I think, that goes into the character. But
I just felt like they realized that aspect of him really well in this series, because they went back and forth on his own understanding of who he was and growing into the acceptance, even at the end, again, spoilers, by kind of confronting arguably his creator. I felt like this explored the Punisher in a way that no other movie certainly has. Now, the comics, this and that, there have been some really standout Punisher. I think the Jason Aaron Punisher stuff I found excellent. Mm-hmm. That alternate, Max line they did. But this, even if you didn't love him as the sort of the visual, I felt like they nailed the characterization. He did a lot of the different things that the Punisher has done in the comics.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of slightly evident early on when he's actually sitting down and having a conversation with Daredevil after he's kind of taken him and chained him up to a chimney and is getting his stuff ready to go after the dogs. But I don't know, and I think maybe we'll see a lot more, because they did announce they've greenlit a standalone Punisher series, and possibly if they have 12 episodes or 13 episodes devoted to him and his journey, outside of having Daredevil around, having Elektra around, having, Foggy and Karen around, we might see a lot more of what they kind of, at least to me, kind of hinted at, kind of teased at, kind of superficially touched on.
I'm actually worried about that myself because I don't know that he sustains a series like that for the whole 13. However, as they've shown with Daredevil Season 2, you could pair him up with somebody else and really find a way to sort of use a different character as a foil and then sort of backdoor pilot them and sort of then, now they get their series and then they get it. It's this kind of like duo, like relay race thing that seems to be happening in Netflix shows.
Well, and that's actually kind of what I'm a bit worried about, because I kind of felt that in this season, and again, I haven't seen the whole thing, but that they were trying to pull an Arrow. Where in Arrow, on the CW, you have a lot of these characters being thrown in, like these, other DC figures, other DC characters, getting to have a spotlight episode or two, or, becoming sort of a sidekick or a squad member for a couple episodes or whatnot. But I think there's also the danger there. It's a CW show. It's a little bit fluffy in areas, and it's also got 22, 23 episodes per season. When you have to keep it tight on Netflix to a tight 13, there's the danger that you're going to just detract from, the main, your main subject of the series. And I don't want Daredevil to turn into let's see how many people we can shove in here and see how they work, and then let's make a whole bunch of series to spin off of them. I don't think that it works that way, and I really hope they don't go that direction.
I'll agree with you that there was some of that vibe with Punisher. I didn't feel that with Elektra. I never felt that there was an element of this show that was a dry run for an Elektra series. I felt that they treated Elektra as part of Matt's story.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but they could take the feedback a different way and say, oh, well, they really liked Elektra, so let's give her own thing.
Yeah. The other thing that I'm nervous about is that they may be setting up the Hand as the big bad for Defenders, and I don't think that's going to work.
I think it's going to be a confluence of the Hand and something else, because you're right. The Hand by itself doesn't really work.
Well, aren't they basically the enemies for Iron Fist?
It could be.
I think I thought that
was a
was
longer history.
Yeah, I thought that was the point for the Hand, where it's of course they're a Daredevil enemy, but Iron Fist I think has a lot more play with them, so they might feature a little bit more centrally.
And maybe it's something where when I do see a series that is effectively grounded in reality, I was literally shouting at the screen with Foggy because, baby, there is no way you're getting a job in New York Bigelow with that fucking haircut. I was literally yelling at the screen with that bit.
Were you guys excited when you saw the writing on the wall and you're like, was it Murdoch Nelson no more? Like that moment, because you know how many thousands of times in the comics has that moment come when Foggy just can't take his shit anymore, and oh my god, I'm just gonna leave, and you should. And I kept saying it. I probably drove Pat crazy as I'm sitting there. Those one or two episodes, I'm like, no more.
Well, they did that.
He had no idea what I was talking about, and so finally I explained it, and he's like, "Oh, shut up."
You should do that during Luke Cage, just for shits and giggles.
Well, they already did it in season 1. They had the sign in the trash, and just I was like, oh, okay.
But it's such a staple of Daredevil. Like, I actually enjoyed that, and the Hand stuff. I know, it's whatever. It didn't make any fucking sense. Okay, let's be honest. The whole weird kid zombie draining their blood, putting them in, that made no sense. They didn't even try to make it make sense. But like watching that scene with the Hand crawling up the building, I don't know what they were referencing. I'm guessing it was Miller, but I got to go back and look for visual reference. But I mean, it looked so cool. It just, like, I was thinking like almost like later Daredevil, like the Shadowlands stuff too, somewhat. But I mean, that just got me so excited. And I don't know. There were just so many things like that they were playing to the comics, but not totally aping the comics. And overall, I think in that second half when it really kicked into high gear, that's when I started going, okay, this is good. I can keep doing this. Let's do more of this, you know?
Anything else with Daredevil before we close on this?
Have they confirmed a season 2 for Jessica Jones yet?
I think so.
I think so.
They haven't said when.
Yeah.
It hasn't started shooting.
The most recent announcements, even though it's separate, was Cloak and Dagger.
I saw the Cloak and Dagger.
For that used to be ABC Family, right?
Freeform is the new.
Freeform. What did I say?
ABC.
Oh, the new ABC Family.
Okay. Yeah.
This is totally a non sequitur, but ABC Family. A little bit of trivia on that. It used to be a Christian network
Yes.
back in the 80s, and they've actually written it into the contract of ownership for this channel that no matter what programming they have on during the day, for 2 hours every single night, they must have the 700 Club and must have some other, CBN related show.
Pat Robertson getting his moment of fame in the TV. Yep.
Now see, my local one doesn't have, or the ABC Family here doesn't have any of that programming on at night. They have it on during the day at 4:00. But I mean, like ABC Family. I mean, you've got Pretty Little Liar. You've got that whole Pretty Little Liars block for, 3 hours.
The Fosters, Recovery Road. Like basically, there's a lot of gay friendly, a lot of I would say non-Christian programming on that.
Oh yeah.
Shadowhunters. I mean, Shadowhunters is all about demons and witches and whatnot. But
I've never heard of any of these shows.
You've never heard of Pretty Little Liars?
Like, maybe?
Oh my god, like
I have to say the last show I watched on ABC Family was The Middleman.
I was just about to talk about that. That was my
the last
favorite fucking show ever. I love that show.
I really wish that show had a budget.
Oh, right.
I think it would have found an audience if it didn't look like they were, scraping pennies together.
Absolutely.
For the shots, yeah.
All the actors can pitch in. Come on, we've got to finish this. We've got to finish this edit.
All right. Well, that's Daredevil season 2. We'll be getting more from Netflix, and we'll naturally be talking about it. So let's move on to comic books. The book I wanted to bring up first, though maybe not be the first in line to talk about it, is the long-awaited Earth 1, Volume 1, Wonder Woman by Grant Morrison and Yanick Paquette. Justin, you were, I think, the first on the block to read this. What did you think of this?
I really, really, really liked it. It is probably the best Wonder Woman I've read in, I'm going to say 5 years, 6 years.
Oh, wow, really?
I enjoyed it.
Over Azzarello and, whoa.
I mean,
whoa,
now, don't get me wrong. I did like Azzarello
Whoa.
and chose Wonder Woman. I like this story. I like the take on it. I like the getting back to a lot of the original basics, at least as homage, as well as Morrison does. And I thought the art was fantastic. And the fact that they made Etta Candy Fat Amy, I loved it.
Okay.
Let me. Okay, so the
Go
art.
ahead.
Let's talk point by point, and I don't completely disagree with you, so just bear that in mind. I was flipping back through this book, okay, which I love in many parts. I think I did really enjoy it, but the art, I like Yanick Paquette a lot. I think his style is amazing. He tries to do a little more Freddie. What's his name? The one who did the Sandman Overture. Who's that?
No, not Freddie Williams.
The third.
Yes. Right. So he kind of tries to do some of that with his layouts and, has done similar things, and that's really cool. But there are pages in this book. I was looking back. There is a scene where it looks like it's Etta Candy and Wonder Woman's coming down with her interesting, like, marching band uniform thing, and, like, the Amazons have shown up and there's soldiers. If you go back to that page, there's no numbers, the faces on those characters, like, they have the most basic, like, dot line face on, like, half the characters. And I'm looking at the rest of the stuff, like, overall, like, it doesn't feel too rushed. It looks nice. They did a good job. But then there's other scenes. There's, like, a hospital picture. same deal. And like, I get the whole cartooning concept of, in the background you can get away with less detail, yada yada. I get that, but there's also kind of come on, really, this looks bad. Having said that, I am not a fan of the female form, really. Obviously, I'm a gay man, but oh my god, some of the curves on these characters are amazing. So soft and round, and yet not. I don't think it's gratuitous. I mean, in parts, it's meant to be because it's kind of aping the whole Marston bondage, submission, all that stuff. And so some of the poses are a little whatever. But I never felt exploitive. It didn't feel like this was a book trying to play to the teenage hormones. Cheesecake. I mean, just every now and again, a little bit more cleavage or a little bit more of a butt shot, but never what do you call it? Never exploitively. So I think so. Overall, I think the art was really good, but there are just pages I can't. I don't know how this got out. I know it was delayed, and I'm guessing it was because of the artist. But oh my god, seriously, why didn't they catch this?
Oh well. Okay, here's where I start.
Oh boy.
I didn't like the book. I didn't like it. There were elements of the book I did enjoy. I really felt, more than anything, Yanick Paquette was not the right artist for this book. When they tackle the images of bondage and submission, I thought they were fairly fleeting.
Yeah.
Which surprised me, given all the build-up and all the hoopla about it, returning to the roots. And I think of artists like Brian Boland, with that one, it's only I think 1 or 2 panels in The Killing Joke where Jim Gordon has the dog collar around his neck. And I needed something creepy like that. But at the same token, it's well drafted and it's not horror, And maybe not so much with the Amazons, but when she was handing the collar off to Steve Trevor, it felt. And I'm with you there, Brian, about there were elements that did feel rushed. Hippolyta has the same fucking facial expression through the entire book.
Totally.
There's no change in that character's expression whatsoever, and I really felt that the artist, and I can't say this for sure, but it felt like he concentrated on the characters he wanted to concentrate on, and the rest were dialed in. Etta Candy is beautiful. I have to agree with you, Justin. Etta Candy made the book for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
But this also shows how indie-minded I am. You thought of Fat Amy. I thought, and maybe because they were calling her Beth Candy. Are you guys familiar with the group, the rock group, The Gossip?
No.
Okay, they have a lead singer who's a very hefty woman, Beth Ditto. And not that you would ever confuse Beth Ditto with a sorority sister, but that's who I heard with Etta's dialogue. And it was very refreshing to see, and maybe we'll touch on this with a particular book from Valiant a little later on. Nice seeing a woman who was confident like that, confident in her own skin while she's surrounded by something which is the complete opposite. That element of the story I did like. I also felt, and this is really weird to say for a book that I didn't enjoy, there was a rushed sense to the book, and the story may have been better suited if it had more than 128 pages. Or, it may have been better suited as a miniseries to say everything that Grant wanted to say. I thought the framing, and it took me like a while to get this, of the framing device with the lasso on certain pages. You know what I'm talking about?
And all that?
Yeah. That took me a while to get that was actually happening.
Right.
So instead of being something novel, I found that to be something strange and in some ways incomplete. And I also felt that her arrival in Man's World is cable news at 3 a.m. It's not a lead story. There didn't seem to be any weight to the story. I feel like it was slight in a sense, and that slight is something I never would associate with Grant Morrison.
I think you're absolutely right about that, not having the length that it needed, because I read this and I don't think Morrison too much. I really feel like Morrison may have been trying to do his best sort of bridge between Marston and sort of more of the modern versions, because it kind of goes through in certain ways the various looks that Wonder Woman has had in some way, shape, or form. You have the jeans at one point, They did more of the armor look at one point. Like, it almost seemed like he was trying to do for what like he did with Batman, where he's like, okay, let's assume all the stories happen to Batman, so there's this crazy character in there somewhere that has to do this and that and this. He's not trying to reference all the stories, but rather just sort of spin this single rope, so to speak, out of these different threads and make it cohesive with his own ideas about Wonder Woman, which were, the Yanick imagery, planes that were really not that subtle, kind of ridiculous, but also like, I mean, I love the panel where Steve Trevor touches a part of the invisible jet and Wonder Woman like yells that, I have no idea if it's Yola, Ola, whatever. But I mean, it certainly seemed like with her facial expression, there was an element of, hey, you hit the spot there, buddy. Like, it was playful with sexuality in a way that I have to absolutely 100% really get behind. No pun intended. But like,
but even then, it didn't go far enough.
It doesn't. No, you're right. You're right.
We have this reference that there is this relationship at times between Diana and Mala. We never see it.
Yeah, you're right.
We never see it, and we really should have seen it, especially since she presents it herself as a counterbalance to her sudden interest in this Steve Trevor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it was a confused book, I felt, and I hate saying I didn't enjoy this book, but no, I didn't enjoy this book at all.
I didn't, like, the first read I had of it, I didn't, love it. So I know what you're talking about, but going back...
And it's a quick read. That was another thing that really surprised me. It's a very quick read.
I read it at work, like, in between things, and I was, flipping through it. I'm like, this is really quick. And I actually left it for my coworkers, like, that afternoon after I picked it up from the store. But, I mean, you're right, Bill. I think it needed more time to breathe and more space, and I think it could have been amazing. But
right. And I have to say, good or bad, the Earth One books have been well-paced. They've been really well-paced. This one is not well-paced.
Yeah.
Well.
I sent pictures.
And I didn't like the Batman or the Superman, the first Superman. I never read the second one.
The second one was awful.
The second one's I would rank as okay. The first one I would rank as okay. They're in new territory. They're trying to find something that'll work in this format. So you give it a little leeway there. The Batman books I think are far superior.
Yeah, the Bat ones are good.
Yeah.
Did you guys? So I put pictures up on our little chat. We may have to share these at some point, but like they really they're just embarrassing. I feel like, I don't know, Matt, did you see the pictures yet? Like, I get again the concept of cartooning, but like, does that seem like especially egregious in lacking of detail?
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
and compared to other panels where like he really kills it. Like, there's some strong art in here I would love to have.
His Hercules panels are fabulous.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Although he does do a little bit of photo referencing, I think, at one point. I mean, he may just really like Angelina Jolie, but as I'm looking at the three fates, the middle one, oh my God, is totally Angelina Jolie.
Shudder.
Well, I've loved Paquette's work from Swamp Thing. I mean,
absolutely.
He did such an amazing job with that, and I think that having him on more books is something I want to see more of, but maybe it was the format, maybe it was 128 pages, maybe it was 100 pages too much for him in this format to be consistent. I'm not sure.
He seems like the kind of illustrator where, because he likes to get into those really involved sort of homages to, I don't even know what art style that is, with all the flourishes and what is that, Art Nouveau? Because he gets into that sometimes, at least in Swamp Thing. I think he just kind of has to sacrifice detail in interiors sometimes in order to make up for that extra investment in other parts of it. I haven't read this graphic novel, so I can't tell where he probably put that extra time, but he's a great illustrator who he's not shy about detail. So if he had to do that, either he had brutal deadlines or he had some other part of the book where he just went overkill.
All right, well that's the first book we're talking about. We're going to keep moving on, and one imprint we really don't talk, and I don't want to say enough about, but we don't really bring up as much as DC or Marvel or even Valiant, is Dark Horse. And I understand from Mr. Brossard that there is a book from the Aliens franchise that he is enjoying. So, Matt, why don't you talk about that?
I was in the mood for Aliens comics because last month they had that silly special holiday that they did on April 26th where it was the 30th anniversary of Aliens the movie, and I don't know, somebody managed to get some sort of traction with the idea that April 26, 426 has something to do with the fact that the planet in Alien is called LV-426. I don't know. It sounded tenuous to me, but any excuse to have tons of Alien stuff in my social media feeds is a good one. So last time I was at the comic book shop, I grabbed a new book from Brian Wood and Tristan Jones. It's called Aliens Defiance. Not surprisingly, it's from Dark Horse. And it's fantastic. I haven't read a really solid Aliens comic in a while. And this is very interesting. So the lead character is a human, but she's on a ship full of synthetic crew members. I can't remember what alien, what name they use to describe their artificial crew members. What was Bishop? Bishop was
Oh, I'm thinking of a synthezoid, and I know that's not it.
And I
know what you're talking about.
And I keep thinking Replicant, and I'm like, wrong Ridley Scott movie.
Are they synthetics? I think Justin, I think you were close. Like, I want to say synthetics or
sure
synthoids.
No,
it's not an oid. It's a.
Anyways,
Herculoids. That's what they were. Herculoids.
So there's just one human on a ship full of synthetic crew members, and they have this weird encounter with a ship that's basically abandoned, that's full of aliens, and the lone human crew member blacks out, and when she wakes up, it's been a month, and the synthetic crew members have left the scene, they've killed the aliens, but there's sort of lingering mystery. And at first, because of what's happened in the movies, your instinct is to assume that the synthetic crew members are up to no good. But this is a weird twist where they're defying their programming, they're trying to expose the conspiracy with Weyland-Yutani to, harvest the aliens and use them as weapons. And it's this strange spin on the model that we're used to, where the people are good, the robots are up to no good, and instead we're sort of getting a flip of that. So the artwork in this looks fantastic. Tristan Jones really does a good, gritty, it harkens to old Dark Horse and certainly the earlier Aliens comics, and I'll definitely be picking up the rest of this series. It's really strong.
Okay. I did some recon there, Matt, looking at the wiki page for Alien Covenant, which is the next film in the series, which was previously bannered as a sequel to Prometheus, but then they threw Alien on it. And it is a synthetic that they refer to.
There you go.
In relation to David and also to Ash. So.
Right. And Bishop. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Bishop's the best.
Bishop. Oh, yeah.
Okay. I hinted at Faith from Valiant. So, Steve, why don't you take over there? How was that book?
Well, this was actually the fourth issue, which was the last part of the miniseries. And I think it's no secret that I want to say probably by the second or third issue, they had already announced that Faith was picked up as an ongoing series. It's been one of their best-selling titles, which, for Valiant, it's not – we're not talking like 100,000 or 200,000 copies. But I think – at its height, for issue number 1, it hit maybe 23,000 was a figure that I saw, and the second and third issue were pretty much, I would say, maybe 12,000, 13,000, which is no big drop-off when you consider something like this, which is a relatively small title from Valiant. But I have to say, they went out with a bang in this one. Jody Hauser, who was the main writer for this series, really brought in a couple elements of the Valiant universe mythology. One with the plantings, which are sort of the vine humanoid creatures that share that single hive mind. Like I had mentioned in a previous show, we had last seen them in Imperium, where they were kind of good guys, kind of bad guys. In this one, they're more or less exposed as, or at least a group of them have formed a cult trying to enact revenge on humanity using, activated psiots. And Faith, of course, is there to stop them. And I think what's really great about this is, sorry, I just read your note. What's really great about this is that they bring in other characters, and the way that Jody Houser writes Faith, it's fun to see her interacting with these other people. So, of course, Archer from Archer and Armstrong is kind of her slight crush right now. She kind of thinks he's cute. He's of course very nervous and whatnot about it because he's like, yeah, I don't know how to handle girls. But I really think that they hit on something really great here. And one of the big things that's come out and has been spoken about quite a bit since this book hit was how Faith is a woman of size. And as opposed to it being kind of like her main feature, and, she's been around for a couple of years now, and before that in the original Harbinger series back in the early 90s. But, here she's actually given, front and center. Like, she is the main character here. We are inside of her head, and Marguerite Sauvage does an amazing job of showing sort of, like, dream sequences and inside, her thoughts. Francis Portela does the main art on this. But it's just it's fantastic to have somebody like a larger woman here as the main superhero, as the one who's getting stuff done. She hits the same challenges, but that any other superhero would. But she attacks it not just by coming in and beating things up, but also by reacting in a way that I think is more realistic. Matt, I know you've probably been reading these. What do you think of the series now that it's done? Or at least the mini, anyway.
I have actually not cracked open the issues of Faith that I have tucked into my pile somewhere. Oh. So I like the character. I enjoy her whenever she cameos in other stuff. Like, for instance, her future self appears in the storyline for The Analog Man in Bloodshot Reborn. And this book looks great to me. I just, it's one of those things where it's hard to keep up with all the stuff that I pick up, and one of these days I'll just slam all the issues I have for Faith all at once, and then I'll discover what a great book it is. Oh yeah, well it's definitely great. I do think that you'll be loving it completely when you start it. But the good thing is it looks like it sets her up very well, at least at the end of this book, for her ongoing series. So I believe that starts in July.
Yeah, it is. What do I have here? I have previews in front of me. It is July. You're right.
Yeah.
Two number ones in 1 year. What is this, Spider-Gwen?
I know, or Squirrel Girl. What the hell?
Yeah. Have you guys seen the solicit for Archer and Armstrong number 5?
Nope.
Nope. Okay. Well, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but let's just say that Faith is, at least on the cover, has a very prominent part, and it's a very. It looks like it's going to be a standalone issue with Mike Norton on art, which I think is an interesting choice.
Yay.
Yeah, so there you go.
Will there also be a pug somehow involved?
I would love to see the pug version of Armstrong. That would be cool. And with all that shit in his bag, there must be something pug related there. All right, let's switch gears over to, let's say Marvel, and let's say Justin. Justin, what do you have for us?
Want to bring up the Assault on Pleasant Hill Standoff. It is the lead up to the new Civil War II that's coming out, I believe, starting on Free Comic Book Day, which is Saturday the 7th. And this book, it was a neat idea. We talked about this before. Basically, Maria Hill got a cosmic cube to become personified, and then had the personification was a little child, and the child kind of took all the villains. But the weird thing is, it wasn't just all villains. There were heroes and former Thunderbolts. like Elektra, that were imprisoned in this town, but they were kind of given their heart's, I don't know if it's their heart's desire or they had the good pulled out of them and had that become the dominant dominant personality. But you have all these supervillains in one small town, and for some reason they didn't think that that was a bad idea. Now, where it came through, some of the big high points was the Cosmic Cube decided to reinvigorate and make Steve Rogers Captain America, the young blonde buff guy again. And the last issue brought out one of a new Quasar. It turns out Wendell Vaughn was one of these people in Pleasant Hill. For the reasons why he gave is he didn't want to be or have the power. It didn't make much sense to me, but he didn't want to be in charge of having that much power and being responsible for it anymore because his confidence or his control wasn't what it should be. So then he decides to give it to a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, the quantum bands to a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. And it's a setup for a new Quasar book. The one thing that I liked the most was there were 3 Standoff books, but there was tie-ins throughout all the Avengers and New Avengers and S.H.I.E.L.D. books. But Illuminati number 6. Now, I know we're not, I think I'm the only one reading that. It's kind of the Hood getting a team of evil bad guys back together, and he's using Titania as one of the bad guys. They went in specifically to Pleasant Hill to rescue her husband, the Absorbing Man. And it turns out throughout the whole time he was in Pleasant Hill, he was basically a good guy. When he realized what happened, he's got very, very resentful. And he's literally, they kind of took him from just being like a Thor bad guy, that he looks like he's somebody you could be keeping an eye out for over the next, few months, as a big player, a serious player, a villain in the Marvel Universe. Add in the ending with, I'll spoil it because I don't think anybody else is reading it. Zemo having the Dr. Selvig from the Thor, having him under control, and then Sin rescuing her father, the Black Panther, Red Skull. And there's even a throwaway line in there about how he's not even going to use his telepathy to win people over. He's going to use the power of Hydra. And everything turns out, it wrapped up really nice. Most of the bad guys got caught, but it still puts you right up, wondering what is going to happen on Free Comic Book Day.
Okay.
And especially if you're invested with the Avengers and like what's going on there.
Okay, well, every indication with Civil War 2, everything we've seen so far appears that Tony and Carol Danvers are the main two that are at odds. Is there any element of that here?
Not in this book. I was looking for that even in her book. Mm-hmm. And I mean, gosh knows she's in a bunch of books now. And I haven't seen anything like that. And that's kind of where I'm wondering what Red Skull has to do with this, or if it's something they do puts them over the edge. One or two of them, gets them at odds.
Okay. I have just a real quick thought on this. The whole thing, to me, read like an editorial excursion to put back the things that Rick Remender didn't put back when he was done. Like the whole Captain America, Steve Rogers thing. He said something else. Oh, having Red Skull no longer uses telepathy, basically disregarding the whole, not disregarding, but kind of putting away the whole brain of Xavier stuff. Like, even bringing in the Uncanny Avengers into this, and it just the whole thing was just kind of an editorial wank that I'm sure in some way, shape, or form does set the stage for Civil War II, but in no important way that you have to actually have read any of it.
You're right on that. I mean, unless there's something that I am missing, or something that we just don't know yet.
Yeah, there might be characters coming out of it that are playing a role, but it's typical of these kind of things where there's always like the pre-event that you got to do. Really, probably has nothing much to do except there's some endpoint that they want to get everybody to. Again, like we talked about with at least Steve Rogers and maybe some other stuff, and that's it. And it's just to sort of shuffle people around, and when it's not executed well, which in this case, honestly, from what I read, I didn't think it was executed well at all. It's an editorial thing. I mean, at least in DC when they do this, they don't make an event out of it. Sometimes, I know sometimes they do, but like, I'm thinking recently of the whole let's depower, let's kill off new Superman so we can get old Superman back in that role. And it just, at least they gave it to Tomasi, who is a past editor, and that's kind of what he does well. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know, this whole thing just, and the fact that they recast Quasar again when they had a perfectly good Quasar in the past with, what's her name? Phyla Vol, am I saying that right? Like, there's nothing wrong with her as Quasar. It's a strong woman character who also happens to be a lesbian, which is great for our representation, that they have to drop in this whole random new S.H.I.E.L.D. person. It just, I don't know. I'm not a fan.
Okay. Well, Brian, since you have the mic, what do you want to bring up in terms of books you're reading?
Sort of carrying off the Civil War II Electric Boogaloo, kind of setting the stage. Sorry, I have to do that. It's contractual. The thing I want to bring up is the Ultimates. And I know I mentioned this before, but this issue number 6 came out. Christian Ward, who, if you did recall, I was not a huge fan of his art in that Matt Fraction all-female Odyssey. What was it called? Odyssey. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Oh, is that the same artist?
Yep, that's Christian Ward.
Wow.
I will say, however, this book, this is a one-off issue, I assume. I don't think he's in the arc, and it does seem like it's very specific to this story. His art here works a lot better. Like, I really like it. It's very trippy, space, Odyssey, Marvel cosmic abstracts, which, again, catnip, right? I love that stuff. And it is all about Galactus. And what I have really, really, really enjoyed in the Ultimates is the role that Galactus is playing. It's very different from the role he's ever played, really. And it's a lot, possibly more than some people can take. Because I think some people like Galactus as a force of nature, and they don't want to have, like, Galactus's inner thought process explained. And it's not too much. Like, it's just enough. But he basically goes up against some of the cosmic abstracts because he's trying, it turns out, not only to save the the group that Captain Marvel, Black Panther, Monica Rambeau, Blue Marvel. Like, it's not he saved them, but this is sort of while that was going on, he's also trying to help figure out why eternity is all bound up in chains. And this ties somewhat back, it looks like, to the Molecular Man, because they bring him out and they kind of have him talk to Galactus a little bit. And, like, it's dealing with some of the ramifications of Secret Wars, which, admittedly, not necessarily, I mean, it's whatever, but just seeing Galactus kind of be a badass and go up against these cosmic abstracts and kind of get his ass handed to him in some ways, and then putting the whole thing into this sort of myth of Sisyphus, which is kind of the framing for the story. It just really worked for me. I really enjoyed it. I feel like, again, it's one of those things where this book is not maybe what you think it's going to be, because it's playing off the Ultimates from the the Ultimate Universe stuff, but not, and yet it's just weird. It's weird but good. Like, it's all the different things mixed up together that shouldn't necessarily go with each other, but it works for me. And I just think a lot of people are missing this book in the shuffle of everything else. I mean, I think I'm the only one reading it here, right?
No, I am.
Okay, well, I spent a lot of time getting caught up with the other one of the big two, DC, over the weekend. And unfortunately, I read a bunch of books, but not the one that Steve is caught up on, which we'll talk about a little later. But one book I have to give a really big thumbs up, big recommendation for, and I was not anticipating this, is Harley Quinn and Suicide Squad April Fool's Special. Did anybody else see this? I'm going to take that as a no. Well, in this book, they present Harley. She's in a bit of a compromised position at the beginning, and we later find out that it is because she is trapped by Argus. And this is effectively the introduction of the new Suicide Squad creative team of Robert Williams and Jim Lee, with some additional material by a very cartoony artist, Sean Galloway, who I think goes by Cheeks. I was not anticipating to enjoy this book nearly as much as I did. And I think they're off to a really good start with Suicide Squad. Matt, I know you had mentioned about how much you enjoyed their spot in Midnighter recently, and I think that a lot of the elements that you liked about that carry on into here. We also see a glimpse of the post-Rebirth world, including a bit heftier, more Viola Davis, less model Amanda Waller. I think the wall is back. And they also present the Suicide Squad relationship to Harley Quinn in a way that makes sense. If this is a character that can carry her own book and at the same time somehow be this captive member of this group, they introduce elements into that which makes it a lot more plausible than they were doing in the core Suicide Squad book, which was actually called New Suicide Squad. And this is some really good art by Jim Lee. It looked like he took a lot of time to do this. I didn't really feel that with Superman Unchained at all. I felt that was... If you told me that he had ghosts helping him on that book, I would not be surprised at all. All of this book looks like Jim Lee, at least of the elements that he's in. So surprisingly, this gets my big thumbs up there. Matt, I mentioned you in the comments there, so why don't I throw it back to you? What else are you reading that you're enjoying?
Another fine issue of Injection came out recently. This is issue 9, and man, I love this series. It continues to be one of those reading experiences where I have to poke my husband and say, oh my god, you won't believe what just happened on this page. And it's usually just like the attitude of the book that makes me want to share it with people. Like, the humor is sharp. It's got like a fun sort of. I keep comparing it to the X-Files, but it's not as dreadful as the X-Files. And it would make a really good TV show if they were to, transition the media. Like, I could see these characters on the screen being really sarcastic, investigating this super creepy and bizarre, series of mysteries that roll up to this sort of super bad idea of trying to alter the course of humanity with an artificial injection of intelligence. And it's a fun book. Warren Ellis is really onto something really cool here, and the art team of Jordi Belair and Declan Shalvey, they make such a fantastic book each month. It's just really it's a book that I look forward to every single time, and consistently one of my faves.
Steve, I think you're reading this too.
I am, and actually, one of the things that I'm definitely going to agree with Matt on is the shareability factor of a lot of the one-liners. I mean, for people who don't read comics in our lives, of which there are many, it might be difficult to describe because you kind of have to you want to basically read the entire issue to them for just the one-liners, the great quips from Viv, especially in this past story arc, have been hands down brilliant. And just even some of the spreads that Declan Shalvey actually draws, is a very interesting way of presenting the art, where you could just have pages upon pages of dialogue and exposition that's happening, but the background art just is wonderful. And I think it was in issue 8, it might have been in issue 9, where Viv is describing his relationship to Maria, through a series of very interesting sexual encounters.
That was the previous issue.
Where he's basically just talking about his relationship with her to all of these random people. I think Dongzilla was one of my favorites. But it's just a great book. And then, of course, I believe that, the mystery is more or less, at least the mystery, the how and the why is cleared up in this issue 9. Is there a 10th issue for this arc, or is this going to be the break issue?
I don't know. I assume that they're gonna wrap up this particular mystery with the wealthy man and his ghost wife and the photograph, like, because they keep collecting it in trades of 5.
Okay, yeah. So that's right, because this would be the 4th issue, or the 5th issue next. Yeah, this interesting secret society, the Rubidoux, I think is being presented in a very different way, which is great. I mean, they're kind of circumventing our expectations there, that you'd think the super secret society is this powerful, whatever entity, and they're just as clueless and under the sway as the gentleman with his ghost wife in the picture. It's very interesting.
There's a panel that I want to read out. So there's these two characters sort of decompressing after an encounter with the injection, and one of them says, "Hey Viv, have you got any of that human ham left?" Because a few issues ago somebody was almost served a sandwich made with people. And the other character goes, "Fucking Irish, you people will eat anything. Did you want him to boil it for 8 hours first?" And her reply is, "Racist." I mean, this is why this book is fucking fantastic. It's got lots of attitude, and it always surprises me how much action they can sort of squeeze in with all of this sort of weird, layered mystery stuff. It's a really complex book.
Well, it's very dialogue heavy. There's a lot of, great interactions and conversations happening, or even if it's just a one-way conversation, especially with Viv. Like you said, there's a lot of action going on in between all of the exposition, so that it flows so well. And of course, the humor evident in the dialogue sequences are just a great counterpoint to the straight up action, and some of that action is relatively gory. I mean, in the first story arc we had, basically somebody getting their skin torn off to save them. In this one, it's actually, I think, at the beginning of issue 9, where somebody gets a bullet straight to the eye in a beautiful sequence of panels. I thought that was just really well drawn.
I'd like to point out that was the result of a dare.
Exactly. I dare you to. I'll give you a bonus if you can end the situation in 2 bullets, which it only takes 1. But it's very. It's smart. It's funny. It's witty. And the concept itself is, I think, pretty unique. It takes the idea of the ghost in the machine and really ramps it up quite a bit. And I hope everybody's reading this. I really do.
Well, Steve, since you've got the mic and since I hinted at it, why don't you tell us about Omega Men?
Oh, Omega Men. Okay, so back to DC. So Omega Men is one of those poor sort of new or DCU titles that sort of caught on and then didn't catch on and was going to get canceled, but then they decided to extend it and finish it out with a 12-issue arc. Issue number 11, of course, is the penultimate issue, and I think it's finally hit its stride, which is really sad to say, a book that's just one away from completing its whole story. But in this issue, it's a great use of sort of like the way that they've been presenting the panels. Everything is very much set in these small panels he uses, and this is Barnaby Bagenda uses a 9-panel layout for pretty much everything, and within those 9 different panels, he can have multiple storylines, multiple activities going on at once, and yet it's very seamless. And it's a great book. This particular issue is filled with action, filled with these great little, I'd say, interesting vignettes of the different Omega Men speaking to, the different planets of the Vega system, trying to unify them together to fight the Citadel, which, if someone has not been reading the Omega Men, that means nothing, and it's just a whole bunch of nonsense I just said. But they've been building up to this for quite some time, and the story where it is now is completely in an opposite direction of when it started. When it started, it was just a weird pseudo-terrorist kind of plot involving kidnapping Kyle Rayner as the Green Lantern and using him as leverage, against, some basically religious suppression and oppression. But here in this issue, they really take an interesting turn by bringing all the different planets together, and all of them are drawn and written very differently from the others. But I love it. It was quick. It was fun. It was exciting, and it really leads into the final issue, issue number 12. Unfortunately, I think at this point, a lot of people have kind of dropped off this book because in the middle it really did meander. But I'm glad I stuck it out because it's really incredible, and actually features a really great new design for Kyle Rayner's Green Lantern outfit, one that incorporates the Omega symbol. That in this case, and this is actually kind of interesting if you think of it in terms of Darkseid. This is a case where the Omega symbol has been claimed by this other group for a completely different meaning, where it's not the anti-life equation. It's actually beyond that. It's the life equation. It's unity. It's transcendence. And I think that the image of Kyle Rayner flying off with his crucifix in one hand and the Omega symbol combined with the Green Lantern sigil on his chest is just a really great image. And it's one of the few times where they really break with the multiple panels per page format that Begender's been basically doing. And actually the book has been drawn in for the past 11 issues. So Very good. I recommend it. I hope people, can pick it up and hopefully they do collect it into a nice trade afterwards.
Okay. I will look forward to eventually reading issues 2 through 11 that I have over there. Correct me if I'm wrong. Issue number 1 had like one line of dialogue in it, right?
It had a little bit more. Most of it
was pretty sparse and really dealt more with the visuals.
Yeah, it was a lot of visual, a lot of sort of editorial panel comments.
Okay.
But yeah, there's a lot more dialogue in this, and but at the same time, they really, Tom King really allows the artist to fill in a lot of that narrative, which is really to his credit in this case, and I think that he does a great job of, presenting obviously the outline of what he wants, but the artist is really bringing the story to life, and even there are several pages where there's no dialogue, where there's no editorial boxes sort of explaining what's happening. It really does rely on the art and the flow of the images to really tell the story. So it's a good combination of the two, I think.
Okay, and consistently been some very interesting covers.
Oh yeah, the covers are great. Yeah.
Who was the artist on that?
The cover artist, or do you mean the?
Oh, I just saw it. Trevor Hutchinson.
Yeah, Trevor Hutchinson's been doing most of the covers, if not all the covers. And I believe Bagenda's been doing most of the interiors, if not all of them.
Isn't that an awesome name, Barnaby Bagenda?
Barnaby Bagenda.
Oh my God.
Sounds like a hobbit.
Or maybe a character in a 1930s crime film.
Or circus showman. Yeah,
we contacted Barnaby Bagenda to launder the money. Okay. All right. Well, since I made a reference to a movie and we have X-Men Apocalypse coming up soon, that means we're going to get some Apocalypse-related books in our spinner racks in the months leading up to. And Justin, why don't you tell us about something going on with Marvel that you were reading that fits that description?
Right now we're in the middle of the Apocalypse Wars. And when they first started talking about this, I really thought that it was going to be a one by one, typical event where you read one, you go to the next book and go to the next book. And it's not like that. It's two separate storylines under the same title. And it's really confusing. And I don't know why they did this. With the all new, I'm sorry, let me get it right because I don't want to say the wrong way. Extraordinary X-Men, they find the Sugar Man from Age of Apocalypse fame managed to have about 100 mutant embryos because as of right now that were not touched by the Terrigen Mists. So Colossus and some of the young farm team X-Men save this arc, but they end up getting transported into the future. And right behind them is the team of Extraordinary X-Men, Storm, Old Man Logan, Jean Grey, Magic. And they get to this part, and it's not bad. It's a neat idea where Apocalypse decided that that mutants were not worthy. And so he has outlawed all mutants. And he's turned, the last 4 remaining mutants into his horsemen, which, of course, always the bad guys. What irritates me is the other one, the Uncanny X-Men, or I believe is what it is, the ones with Magneto. Is it that one?
Yeah,
is it Uncanny?
Magneto and Psylocke.
Yeah, it is Uncanny.
Yeah, Monet.
Well, they're tied in with the Apocalypse Wars. However, it has nothing to do with what's going on in Extraordinary X-Men. And it's this kind of ridiculous bringing back Archangel as Angel of Death or Apocalypse for the how manyth time. And it just, Brian, you said about how Standoff Pleasant Hill wasn't laid out well. This just seems really, really much of the same. It's just like they wanted to tell some sort of apocalypse story just to tie into the movie coming out.
Yeah, that's exactly what it feels like to me. And I like some of the parts of things they're doing, but they're calling it Apocalypse Wars. I mean, it may eventually converge, maybe, but it doesn't seem like that's what it's doing. Yeah. No, I'm not a fan of the X-Men right now. Although the Dennis Hopeless's all new is probably the strongest of all of them. And what's even weirder about it is I like Jeff Lemire's Old Man Logan a lot. Actually, that's a great standalone book, and he's also writing, what is it, Extraordinary X-Men. So I don't know. It's weird. I don't know. I don't like it.
Well, I've been following the books. Uncanny, I'm kind of iffy on. And I'm with you there, Justin, on the whole, it's Angel again. Ooh, okay. But All New X-Men, of course, I've loved that title since the last volume was launched. So I think I'll stick with that no matter what happens. They could probably kill off Cyclops again, and I'd still continue reading it. All New Wolverine, though, is a lot of fun, and I think it's untouched by the Apocalypse War crossover completely. Although I believe it might be connected to the Civil Wars too, when it really gets going. So it's interesting that title and I think Old Man Logan are kind of set apart.
Yeah, as far as I know, those two are not connecting into the Apocalypse or connecting into anything. Now, where we're at with Old Man Logan with issue 4, that kind of brings them right to where he meets Storm, Iceman, and them for Extraordinary X-Men. So it's kind of like Extraordinary X-Men is a little bit ahead of what Old Man Logan is.
Right, but I think they caught up now.
Right, it's kind of like with I just finished issue 4 of Old Man Logan, and that's right when he meets Storm, and he's like, well, maybe things are going to be okay now.
And he's going off. It's actually really good because it's taking what Mark Miller did and sort of in coloring out some of the details, by flashing back to that world, but also now he's looking for his future wife as a younger girl so he can protect her. Like, it has, like, it could become like another old, was it a Lone Wolf and Cub-esque type story. But,
Yeah,
I
with
mean,
a
there may
creepy
also...
twist. I mean,
Well,
that is kind of creepy. Come on.
That is a weird twist, and they haven't really explained that. It may just be a cliffhanger for cliffhanger's sake, but no, I'm much. Part of it's the art, because the Sorrentino art, like, he is an amazing artist. At some moments, he's channeling Jay Lee, but actually in a way that's dynamic and not just like too supposed. But he's also doing layout stuff like J.H. Williams, and like it's amazing that he is only doing a book like this, although it is a pretty high profile book, I guess. And he's worked with Lemire back at DC on the Green Arrow stuff, but like, he is a huge, huge, he has a huge future ahead of him because his art is just killer.
So, Matt, I believe you're taking a break from the X books?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the things, when they get it right with Marvel, I'm so into it. At one point I was reading, all new X-Men pretty faithfully, and then jumping into some of the other books when it got juicy. I loved Battle of the Atom, and then I don't know, as of this huge status quo shift, none of these books are really working for me. There's elements that there's elements that don't make any sense. Like, all of a sudden now they've kind of scattered the young X-Men into multiple teams, and we've got Old Man Logan, and, the fact that they're investing in characters like Sugarman just tells me, oh, just wait a few more months and then it'll probably shift around and be, a better status quo. Yeah, I'm not feeling this current set of situations with the X-Men, with the Terrigen Mist and the Limbo and all that. It's too much.
Well, you should probably check out All New Wolverine, because there's absolutely no connection to any of the other X-Men books. And the fact that this past month they had a really great crossover with Unbeatable Squirrel Girl. So,
oh, nice.
Yeah, it's actually, what's really interesting is that All New Wolverine kind of started out pretty serious until they introduced the clones, of which there's now just one clone left, and she's sort of the young perky teen version of Wolverine. And Squirrel Girl comes in and already brings them a furry pet mascot, with she actually brings them a Wolverine named Jonathan, who then becomes, the little teen clone's best friend. She's like, I'm going to keep him. And she has this great sequence where she's like, I'm going to pet him and hug him and squeeze him and put him in pinstripe suits and, make little villages for him to stomp and destroy. And it's just, it's cute and it's wonderful. And it just kind of was such a great change of pace for that book. But it really just kind of highlights how separate that whole, her character and how, her whole narrative is from the rest of the X-Men. Like, there's like nothing. I mean, Angel showed up for the first couple of issues and then was gone. So it's just her, which is great. It kind of makes me feel a little bit like the old, was it Chris Claremont who did that Wolverine series back in the 80s?
Mm-hmm.
It kind of has that sort of lone wolf feel to it that I think she needs. I think you need to have a Wolverine that's kind of, just doing her own thing and having her own cast separate from everything else. Even though there are guest stars occasionally, I think it really works for that character, and it's nice to see her as a she rather than the same gruff, Wolverine that we've been seeing for the past 30 years.
All right. Well, let me give Brian the opportunity to talk about his second book. Brian, what else are you reading?
So, it's weird. I went back and went to my comic shop, and since I had seen some of the Rebirth stuff and Superman specifically interested me, I went back and picked up the Lois and Clark Superman book from Jurgens and Weeks. Is anybody else reading this?
Uh-huh.
Have we talked a lot about it? Because I don't remember, and I'm kind of shocked. It's an amazing little book.
Yeah, no, it's one of my top of the stacks right now with Titans Hunt, and I think I talked about the first issue
Okay.
And again, if you want your fill of bearded Superman, you go to this book. In terms of the bearish quality of
Oh
it,
my
which is
God.
also really funny because Lee Weeks is like this devout born again Christian, yet he's providing us with this sinful sort of beautiful vision every month. I'm really enjoying the book.
And
So
what's interesting
yeah.
is so far it's at no point yet have I seen it dip into that. It's still saying very separate. So it's like
Yeah, it's
they're
still telling
doing
its own story.
right.
Yeah.
But it's good, and it's an interesting sort of look at if this Superman from the pre-52 was in the new 52 universe, and things that he knew happened haven't really happened yet. It's the man out of time, right? It's old man Logan again, or any number of old tropes where he is in this space that is different from his, but is similar enough that he can try to, what he thinks, prevent things from happening. And the big thing he's dealing with is Hank Henshaw, and saving him as an astronaut, as opposed to the pre-52 where he crashed and got the powers to become the cyborg Superman. That is an interesting idea, and having like a Fortress of Solitude like place that isn't the Fortress of Solitude, but has a lot of those classic Silver Age trappings, and dealing with this new villain who Blanc, I think. That's kind of an odd character. I don't know that I love him as a character, but he's certainly sort of becoming this foil for the old 52, the pre-52 Superman. And again, it's classic, Lois and Clark. They're together. They have a son. The son is learning how to handle his powers, so that's an element. I'm kind of scared now because it looks like he's going to be Superman's going to be the new Superman, or the Superman, the main Superman. And that might diminish some of the awesome stuff we're getting in this. But at least for 6 issues, I guess, I don't know if it's 5 or 6, it's still a good little story, and has relevance, like you said, going forward. So if you're not reading this and you can go back to your book, your shop, and like mine just had all 5. I have 4 right now. Had all of them just sitting there on the shelf
great.
in the back issues. So
yeah, from what I understand, number 1 is a bit hard to find right now, and I believe the first trade is coming out fairly soon. Actually, they reconfigured it. It initially was a 12-issue miniseries, and it was retracted to 8. But like Titans Hunt, the creative forces are following into Rebirth and finishing up the story as part of that post system. So it'll be 1 trade, and I believe it's going to be in July or August.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's good, and it's interesting seeing the family dynamic and the family in hiding dynamic.
Yep.
There's a lot of good things about this book. Also, Lois's career as an anonymous writer, I think there's been some pretty interesting developments. I don't know if you've gotten as far as issue 7 yet, but there's some interesting stuff that happens in 6 and 7 related to that.
Oh wow! So I need to go grab the new, because I'm only up through 4, so I got to go find those now. Okay, cool.
Yeah, no, it's good, and it's Dan Jurgens being pretty, I would say, at top form. I think this is the equal of a lot of his mid-90s Superman stuff.
Oh my gosh! And he's writing not in a style that feels dated at all.
At all. If you put some hip writer, I wouldn't want to say hip, but a contemporary writer, I don't think you'd bat an eye.
Not at all.
If you put that on the cover. So yeah, I'm enjoying that book too. Again, with part of my DC catch up, let's go to the other part of the world's finest team. I have to give it up for Batman number 51, which is I had thought 50 was going to be the wrap up of the Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo run, but it actually is 51, and it's a really interesting book in that the conflict is something that's fairly pedestrian, and this is about as close as you can get to Batman having a night off, which he can't. He's just not in this wiring. But for a series that I think is going to be lauded for some time, it was interesting seeing this wrap up and culminate in a very quiet story. You do have farewells, in a sense, Snyder and Capullo's farewells to a lot of elements that were important through the series, whether it be Jim Gordon or the Court of Owls or Joker. Luckily not Flappy Face Joker. Joker's in there in one minor twist there. You see Alfred's hand growing back in a way that makes sense, which is not a reboot. And at the core of this particular book, in a lot of ways, it's a love letter to Gotham City. Not so much in the sense that it's a beautiful place to live, but it's a beautiful place for stories. And I really thought this was Greg Capullo's best art throughout the entire series, mainly because it was so simple and so constricted to most of the panels only have like 2 or 3 elements beyond the central figure. And I really enjoyed this, and I think if you were following the series, it's a novel way to tie this up. And even if you haven't been following the series from day one, I don't think you'd be lost reading this story. It stands on its own. So, gentlemen, thank you for a 51 issue run plus annuals and 0 issues or whatever.
Okay, explain to me how Alfred's hand can grow back in a way that doesn't feel like a reboot.
It's technology.
Okay.
Yeah, which involves other DC characters.
Magic, comics.
Nope.
Interesting.
Yep.
I just wanted to remind everybody that if you Google Greg Capullo Boom Boom, I think that sort of counters all of the amazing contributions he's made to Batman so far. Sets him. He's back at 0. He's at square one.
Yeah, just like Namor with Jay Lee. Okay. All right. Any other books that people want to get in really quick? Going once? Nothing else?
Well, I mean, should I bring up Silver Surfer number 3?
It's his 50th anniversary. Why the hell not?
I mean, it is exciting. It's incredible. Obviously, it's not a milestone issue number because Marvel's kind of, they've a long time abandoned the long running series sequentials. But they've been having these anniversaries for these characters that have been out for a long time, and Silver Surfer's one of them. 50 years since he was first appearance in, it was Fantastic Four?
Fantastic Four number 48. Yep.
Number 48. And essentially the new volume of this series, and of course it's Mike Allred and Dan Slott, and I've just been loving this team since the volume 1 of the Silver Surfer from last year and the year before. Beautiful art. I think it's perfect. Allred in this, for cosmic Marvel is just, to me, is wonderful. I know not everybody loves his stuff, but here I think he's been capturing, the really retro, bizarre, psychedelic coolness of Silver Surfer since he started on this book last year, or I guess it was 2014. So with the 50th anniversary issue, I'm guessing that they wanted to go full circle. So Silver Surfer has been experiencing, some interesting flashbacks over the past few issues to his days on his original home planet, the home planet that he left, and he became the Herald of Galactus in order to protect. So of course he left his love behind and his home behind, never to be able to return. And I'm sure over the years it's sort of come back up in other storylines. But here, interestingly enough, his long lost love has reappeared, and she's actually been going around the galaxy, transmuting all these different civilizations and worlds into replicas of their original home world. And she, of course, comes to Earth and starts doing that to Earth as well. And, of course, the side effects of this is that it makes all Earth culture, which is, of course, the big thing that Silver Surfer loves about Earth and has come to really understand about Earth and Earth people. It makes it moot and basically replaces it with the culture of the homeworld. So, there's some great throwbacks here. Over the history of Silver Surfer. He has a big old fight with the Thing, whose brain's been taken over, and of course, their relationship there with Fantastic Four was always very prominent in, throughout the history of Silver Surfer. Alicia shows up. I'm forgetting her last name, but she is
Masters.
Yes, Alicia Masters, blind artist, one-time girlfriend to the Thing, and
one-time girlfriend to Human Torch, which I loved from the Byrne run.
Yeah, she's kind of been around a little bit, I guess.
Or maybe that wasn't Alicia. Justin, you were reading it then. Did they kind of change that?
Well, yeah, it was Alicia Masters, but then they revealed that it was actually a Skrull named Elijah.
Who later sort of kind of joined the team for a while.
Right.
Okay,
And I don't know where she's at nowadays, but I love that. I love that that was Fantastic Four 300, where Alicia started dating Johnny Storm, I believe it was. And it was just amazing.
I think it was earlier than that. It was the 300 was supposed to be the wedding.
Right. I guess that's what I'm thinking.
It was like around the 250s when the Thing went off on Battle World after the first Secret Wars.
Yeah, I mean, that whole, like, 84 through, like, 87 I'm a little blurry on.
Yeah, whereas I was really into Fantastic Four at that point because I loved Byrne on Fantastic Four. You know, it was just this really nice thing of, like, it kind of happened by accident.
Mm-hmm.
With Alicia being Ben's girlfriend, Johnny had never realized that Alicia was only 1 year older than he was. Right. And that started this conversation because she was missing him and Johnny was missing Ben as well. And they kind of bonded over that. And in the absence, I wish that wasn't retcon because I thought it brought a sweetness to Johnny that wasn't there before. So. Well,
yeah, and that's the thing. If I'm not mistaken, the whole thing was I mean, like, there wasn't even a part of it. That was all from the very beginning, Elijah.
Yeah.
Or the Skrull. So, I mean, I didn't, I liked that twist, but I can understand how people who, like, if you want, you read the original Byrne stuff when it came out, I can understand how people were upset about it.
Okay, Alicia Masters tangent over. Steve's return.
No, that's all good information. So it brings her in. It brings Dawn, who's been his companion, Doctor Who style since the launch of the original Volume 1. They, of course, are there to help him, to ground him, to give him, a reason to save Earth beyond just the culture. Because, of course, they're unaffected through some wonderful, plot hocus pocus by this ray that's turning people into zombies, basically, or like super peace-loving zombies, which is interesting. But it is really a pretty cool way of celebrating Silver Surfer's 50th by bringing in these elements of the past. So he's on Earth where he was trapped for decades. He's got his original love appears and as sort of the villain in the story. So that's an interesting twist.
Shalabal is the villain?
Shalabal, good old Shalabal.
Oh, boy, do I have to get this now.
It is really, really fantastic, and of course the engine with which she creates this massive galactic change is kind of interesting. A Deus Ex Machina that is fun to play with. But this I think is a great throwback to a lot of those old stories and references and elements. But it really does show, at least for me, because I did follow a lot of the old Silver Surfers. I read the long running series that came out, I think, in the 80s.
Ron Lim.
Yeah. Oh, Ron Lim. Oh, can't say no to Ron Lim. That went through the 90s. This is purely Dan Slott's and Mike Allred's version of Silver Surfer. So although it does have a lot of these throwback elements, it really is this very distinct version. And I like that because I like the changes that Slott's kind of really written into the character. And I think the art really highlights how unique he is, in this run and in this volume. But I definitely recommend it. If anybody's a big Silver Surfer nut or is filled with nostalgia for Silver Surfer, this is a great issue to pick up.
I have to give one counterpoint to this. I liked the series before the reboot from the Secret Wars, and then after the reboot, I've actually sort of been losing interest. And it's because I liked it best when it was wacky, zany, crazy. And the first two were kind of like that, but this felt more like something serious and epic and trying to do the Shalabal thing and all. And other than Allred's art, which is its own unique style and sort of fits more of the wacky tone of the previous stuff, I didn't like the pairing of this story with the tone of wacky, because it didn't feel wacky. But then you see the cover art for the next issue, and it's kind of wacky again. So I feel like this is, Slott was talking about this as a game changer and all this other stuff. I mean, he knows what's coming. Mm-hmm. But I feel like this is, as long as it keeps its more wacky tone, and it's, like you said, very Doctor Who, I'm okay with it. But I did not love this issue because it wasn't as wacky. So,
Well, I think that, no, you totally are right here. This issue, it really is a departure from what they've been doing. But I think it's done in the service of the sort of retrospective, that it's a traditional Silver Surfer story from when he was on Earth.
Yeah, I mean,
it feels like a Defenders story. It really does, and it's just it's funny. And like you said, that last page where they show you sort of the preview for the next issue, it's like, Silver Surfer, he could possibly, will he make it? Will he survive to the next issue? And of course, probably does, because it's a really goofy image showing the next issue. So I think it's going to go back to the wacky after having this slight 50th anniversary departure.
If you like Mike Allred's art, for that alone, you should pick this book up, because he's killing the art. And Silver Surfer has been one of my favorite characters for a long time. And I think you're right, Steve. This is revitalizing him in a way that they have not been able to do probably since the 90s, really. Because even in the Abnett and Lanning stuff, he never really got the attention I think he deserved, but they were trying to do something different, so I get it. But ever since the Starlin stuff in the 90s and some of the stuff since, it just hasn't been the same. So,
well, it's interesting you mentioned that, because I had talked to Keith Giffen once about that, because originally with that element of Marvel Cosmic, Giffen was also in the mix early on in the Annihilation process,
right?
And apparently Silver Surfer was viewed as toxic by a lot of Marvel editorial. And on top of it, J. Michael Straczynski, who has a rep of not playing well with others, had dibs on the character. So if that characterization was underdeveloped, I would not be surprised if that's where that's from.
That's interesting. Yeah, because Straczynski, what did he do with him? I forgot now.
He was part of his Fantastic Four run, but
is that what it was?
Didn't read it. Yeah, I never read his run.
No, I don't remember it being great.
No. But that's he's a difficult character to work with. It's hard to kind of have him, because they either have to depower him somehow to have him work on Earth, or they have to throw him up against these insanely over exaggerated cosmic characters. Mm-hmm.
I just always found it was a hard character to sustain.
Well, because he's got the power cosmic. Basically, he can do anything. And when you have a character who's practically omnipotent, except for his very, very interesting humanity and his connection to humanity, it makes it difficult to write for.
I think that's why you typically pair him with Galactus, because Galactus is such a force of nature that, by contrast with the Silver Surfer, he's a little more relatable, compared to Galactus. That balance always worked, I think, really well.
Because he's the conscience, he's the cerebral element to Galactus's narrative.
Right, exactly. So, well, I'd be interested to see them come back around with that relationship, because they always do. It's kind of they may escape each other's orbit for a while, but they always tend to circle back. And now that Galactus over in the Ultimates is like the life bringer, kind of has his own agency as a force for positive change, seeing this wacky, crazy surfer kind of interact. They did this in that first run of Slott's a little bit, but this was pre Secret Wars, so it didn't have the same status quo change, that Galactus has had. So I'm kind of interested to see when they come back around and how that relationship is resumed or not.
Well, it's interesting. I think that you kind of mentioned it there. Slott has a very interesting relationship with Silver Surfer. Whereas Silver Surfer was the conscience for Galactus, or a nice foil for him. That's what the character of Dawn is here in Slot's run. And Dawn is a very human person. She's kind of goofy, she's interesting, she's wacky. Whereas Silver Surfer is kind of cold and distant, but he changes. He actually develops more of a human character throughout that first volume. And then the second volume, it's more of a continuation of that. But you really do see a growth and a change in his character that you don't really experience as much, I think, in some of the older work. He's thrown in there as, oh, woe is me, look, I'm cursed with all the super, universal power that I have to do something with, and have to protect Earth no matter what. Unless I'm on the other side of the universe, then it's like the Heralds of Galactus I have to fight, or the embodiment of the universe. I guess I have to do something here. It's interesting. And I think the Doctor Whoization of Silver Surfer kind of breathed new life in it for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm glad you brought that up. It has me psyched to pick up 2 and 3, which I neglected to do. So I shall do that.
Well, and it's kind of weird. I don't think it's coming out as regularly as it should. I think there's I know that the first volume was hit by a couple delays here and there. Made it feel like it took forever for issues to come out.
Yeah, I believe you're right. We're going to wrap this one up, and when we wrap this show up, it means we move to the last segment of the show, which is the Woofs of the Week segment, where we highlight something, be it a comic book or a movie or a TV project or a charitable initiative. I just love saying charitable initiative, so I say that each time. Or a Kickstarter, something along those lines that we want to spotlight that you, fair listener, may be interested in learning about. Let's start with Justin. Justin, what is your Woof of the Week?
Mine is actually coming down near Brian's neck of the woods. A group I used to belong to when I lived down in Florida. The Gulf Coast Men's Choir has changed a little bit over the years. They are now Diversity, the Voices of Sarasota. They're in a LGBT choral group made up of both men and women now. They have a free concert coming up on Sunday, May 22nd at 4 p.m. It is a wonderful concert, or it is a wonderful group. I honestly wish I could be there. It's going to be in Sarasota, Florida, St. Andrew United Church of Christ. And you can go to their website, diversitysarasota.org, to find out more.
Brian, since Justin threw you the bone there, Brian, what is your Woof of the Week?
So I recently got to sit down with a creator that I have corresponded with and followed and admired for years, and it's just taken me that long to finally get him to sit down and me to sit down. And Alex Wolfson, you may have seen his stuff on this site called Yowie 911. Yowie, like the Japanese boy, I hate saying boy love, but male love. Usually they're a little less bearish, a little more young, and they a lot of yaoi is actually written by women in Japan to sort of act as like wish fulfillment for, I guess, their crazy, weird sexuality things that they have. I don't know. It's weird. Like I don't understand the Japanese culture and yaoi, but what we get out of it in America is some cool stuff. And a lot of the early gay manga was yaoi related. So from that tradition, Alex Wolfson and various artists that he's worked with have developed sort of an American version of that, and it's in the form of webcomics that Alex has funded entirely before Kickstarter, before any of that other stuff. He actually got some of his stuff up on the website and started getting some attention. So I sat down with him on Flame On recently, and we talked for a good hour about how he got into it, how he transitioned from his day job as a video editor into this space doing LGBT comics, webcomics full time, and talking about some of his artists like Adam DeCracker and Veronica Gandini, and one of the other artists that I don't have in front of me, but who did Artifice. But his big thing now is the Young Protectors, and if you've seen any art online of this very muscly, gray-haired, sort of menacing villain and a hot, fiery redhead younger superhero, that's what that's from. And it was just a great interview. And if you like comic creators, and specifically if you are interested in their stories, of how they got to where they are and what they've done, this is up on Flame On Show. If you go look on Flame On, any of the podcast networks that are out there, including now Google Play of all places, you can check that out. It's probably the most recent one when this episode comes out. And Alex was just super sweet. He's going to be at Geeks Out's FlameCon this summer. So if anyone's interested in going to that, you should definitely look for him and say hi.
Okay, let's move on to Matt. Matt, what is your Wolf of the Week?
Little tiny one. So last week I got a chance to try mini golfing, and I really enjoyed it. I think I want to do more mini golfing. That's it.
Nice.
Okay.
I love putt-putt golf.
Steve, let's move on to you. What is your Wolf of the Week?
Two quick ones. The first one would be a shout out to my brother, who is having his birthday today. Unfortunately, he missed Star Wars Day by one day, so I won't hold it against him, but happy birthday, Mike. And secondly, I did want to talk about, and I know not everybody picks up previews, but I happened to this past week, and apparently Image now is starting to provide a sort of a separate magazine component to previews. It can be purchased separately for $1.99, but it does come free with previews if you do pick it up. And basically, it's called Image Plus, and it gives you additional articles talking to the creators, the artists, the writers that Image is trying to highlight or spotlight for upcoming books. And what's great about it is that it also contains a lot of previews from those comics that they're going to be putting out in the next several months. There's some little great stuff from, I believe it's Brendan Fletcher, or Brandon Graham, sorry. That's cute and snarky at the beginning. But there's also quite a bit of great comic art in here and some really wonderful articles and insights. So I do recommend picking it up. If you pick up previews already from your LCS, make sure to grab this. Its first issue just came out this month, and they are hoping to make it monthly. We'll see what happens. But definitely it's very interesting. And I know that DC just started doing this for Rebirth. I don't know if they're going to be continuing, but they had something very similar with the Rebirth supplement to previews this past month as well.
Beautifully constructed book. From what I understand, there may be something new from DC after January.
And that actually would be very very nice to see. I know that Marvel's been having their separate supplement for a very long time. But with Marvel, it's been mostly just like these are the books that are coming out. Whereas Image definitely is more of a magazine format where it's mostly articles and comic previews. And DC's little entry was kind of in between those two. I really hope Image keeps this up because it was definitely a great first issue.
And I think a very important selling point for this Image Plus is that each issue contains a 3-page story from The Walking Dead.
Yes,
which is by the Walking Dead team of Kirkman and Aldard. And at least this first arc is providing Negan's pre-zombie apocalypse story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and
which is fun.
It
You're a
made
big fan of that.
perfect sense when you see where he is at before things go and what profession he was in. It was it was only 3 pages, but it's wonderful. It was wonderful to read. And with DCBS, we get a bundle for previews, which I think retails at $3.99, and you get the bundle of Marvel previews, Diamond's previews, the Image book for 75 cents. So I get that every month. Okay, on to my Wolf of the Week. And my Wolf of the Week is a podcast, and it's a podcast by the growing Huffington Post network. And this is Candidate Confessional, Defeated Politicians Tell All. It is hosted by Sam Stein, who's a fairly notable talking head on a lot of political shows, and Jason Cherkis. And they interview a series of politicians who have lost prominent elections. Some of the people that they've interviewed so far have included Wendy Davis, Michelle Bachmann, Tim Pawlenty. Unbelievably, the episode where they interview Newt Gingrich is an amazing hour and 15 minutes. It's great to listen to. Very recently, Martin O'Malley, John Huntsman, Clay Aiken with his failed senatorial run. And just to show that it's not restricted to the States, Matt, there also is an episode titled How the Hell Do You Lose to Rob Ford? So it's definitely worth a listen, especially in this current climate in the States where we are in full election frenzy. And I am surprised because usually when I've listened to politically oriented podcasts, they've always fallen flat or they're way too brief. And this one gives enough air and enough space to really get to know the people that they're being interviewed. And I sincerely hope that these are politicians who have left politics behind, because there are F-bombs flowing left and right in some of these episodes, which would be very easy to use in an attack ad. So getting into the Confessional, Defeated Politicians Tell All, podcast from the Huffington Post Network. And since we've wrapped up the Wolves of the Week, that means we're wrapping up this episode. Again, we are the Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on the Twitter and the Tumblr and the Instagram as Comic Book Bears. You can find us on Facebook as Comic Book Bears Podcast. If you want to listen to us, you can do so through iTunes, through Stitcher Radio, through Podbean, through various platforms. And if you want to send something to us, you can do so by sending an email to comicbookbears@gmail.com. So until next time, I'm Billy Z.
I'm Justin Allen.
I'm Brian Pittard.
I'm Steve Morby.
And I'm Matt Broussard.
You're going to hear a wolf and an explosion, and again, we'll be back next week. Take care, everyone.
Whoa!
From the sun, people get ready, 'cause here it comes, it's a light, a beautiful light, over the horizon, into our eyes. Oh my, how beautiful, oh my beautiful mother, she told me, son, in life you're gonna go far, if you do it right, you'll love where you are. Just know, wherever you go, you can always come home. 240,000 miles from the moon, we've come a long way to belong here, to share this view of the night, a glorious night. Over the horizon is another bright sky.